What is it that really makes you angry about the situation we're in now, post-Brexit?
Well, I think if you look at the mandate, it's a very small margin between Remain and Leave, and to my mind, the difference was people who live outside of cities, who are older, quite nostalgic for the past, comfortable. We're not talking about a family in Doncaster who find just getting through a week really difficult. I'm talking about comfortable, white English people, and the fact that they somehow are dictating the future of this country. I'm just worried that we're isolating ourselves as a country, and it just seems that we're going down a route that doesn't really listen to the voices of the young, and it seems to be dictated by the more comfortable, older English voter, conservative voter, essentially. I'm not talking about the person who voted Labour and then became UKIP. I'm talking about your classic conservative Middle England voter, and they're the difference between 48 and 52, to my mind. And I just don't understand why the country is allowing that nostalgic, somewhat distant idea about what this country should be dictate to the rest of us who feel very strongly that, you know, there are huge problems that need to be addressed. We need to talk about them. We need to keep discussing this. We need to listen to. I mean, my daughter's nearly 18, but she can't vote in this election. She's hugely frustrated by that, and I'm sure she represents a huge amount of people who just don't feel like they can change anything now, and this is a point when we need to change stuff. We need to keep talking. I'm not trying to kind of sort of belittle the importance of people in that specific kind of person who's comfortable, doesn't necessarily have a lot of financial problems anymore. You know, they've worked hard all their life, but they're nostalgic. They want to go back. They don't want to go forward. We need politicians that look forward and not nostalgic. Everything is built on these. Isolationism, to my mind, is going back. It's not. We need to go forward. We need to keep our minds open.
If you'd known that Brexit was going to happen,
yes,
how would you have behaved differently in the run-up to the?
Well, I would have just been a lot more active. I mean, I would have participated in the conversation more than I did. I mean, I like most people, didn't believe that a discussion about the machinations of our relationship with the EU would turn into something so divisive and potentially so dangerous. You know, this is politics of division, and I, like you, grew up believing that we were progressing away from that. You know, I grew up in the late 70s, early 80s. Bands like the Specials, incredibly influential to me at that age. You know, they spoke of integration and open-mindedness, and I just think we need that. We need that again, clearly, because we thought we'd kind of combated racism. And
so, what should people like you do going into this election?
Well, it's a good question. What do you do? I mean, short of getting out on the streets and canvassing, which I'm happy to do.
Who for, though?
Well, exactly. Who do you vote for? I mean, it's all kind of. I don't know. I mean, you have to look at each constituency individually, I suppose, because.
And vote tactically?
Well, it doesn't seem like there's any other option. I mean, and unfortunately, it's a very clear, and from Theresa May's point of view, it's the smart thing to do. Vote. call an election while the opposition is essentially in chaos. But unfortunately, the result will be a more autocratic government and more division.
Jamie, you live in Paris. Do you have any of the same fears about the way the world is moving from that perspective?
Yeah, of course. Well, I mean, it feels a little scarier in Paris because, we have the elections on Sunday, and if Marine Le Pen gets in, then essentially the country is going to be run by a racist party. And I pay taxes over there, but I can't vote. So I'm essentially an immigrant living in Paris. But my political landscape at the moment is filled with all of that and what's happening over there. And it is scary. I mean, also it's very volatile on the streets of Paris at the moment. After the first round of the elections, there were many riots all over the city. On Sunday, they had the Monday May Day march. And they always do it in my area around the Bastille. And they were throwing Molotov cocktails at the police. And, so this Sunday, if she gets into power, I think it's going to be.
But of course she
the
won't.
city's going to be on fire probably.
But it won't.
She won't. Well, you don't know. It is pretty close, and everyone's very, very worried about it. No.
When politics gets extreme, music and art often engages much more openly and straightforwardly.
Yeah. I mean,
do you think that will happen here, or is happening here?
Well, I mean, we've been through a long period of non-political music. Really, it's become, it's transformed. It's almost unrecognisable, the whole process of and the sort of interface between making a record and it getting to the public is just so different to how it was when I started. You would have thought it would give people an incredible platform to express their politics, but there's not a lot of politics in music. It's, I suppose it's got something to do with the fact that record companies find it harder to make money out of music, so they are less inclined to sign young artists with an inclination towards
Nothing controversial.
Nothing controversial, basically. Yeah. So it's probably the only way that you're going to be able to do that is by being completely independent.
Isn't that easier though now? I mean, in these days you don't need a record company in the same way, do you? I mean, you've got access to YouTube.
We don't
and
have one
music
after this album, do we?
I think
Can't you be influential without the control of a record company saying, no, don't be controversial?
Absolutely. But I think what I'm saying is that, I think the whole commercial aspects of music has become, as you say, completely non-contentious.
But also, I think you have to be careful how you are political in a band. You have to be quite subtle. I think if you get on a soapbox and start preaching your ideas at people, they're more likely to turn off. And I think what we do in Gorillaz is we put a lot of ideas in there, but it's there for you to discover or for you to read within the lyrics or the videos. We never preach it.
Yeah, with this record, it was more of a kind of emotional response to, the sort of irony of this record was that while clearly the country was about to make this kind of radical shift towards a more isolationist, divisive society, we were in this studio imagining what if Donald Trump got into power in America. It's a sort of dark, twisted fantasy of like the future.
And is that what you said?
But the
to
two
your...
are connected completely, and I think, and I suppose with Le Pen in France, it was there was a kind of, at one point there was almost the assumption that, well, it happened here, when it happened in America, then it's going to happen in France. Thankfully, I don't think that's going to be the case. So what do I know?
So when you were doing Humanz, was the idea that you were talking about something that would never happen?
Yeah.
Or was it something that you thought would happen?
He was talking about the most ridiculous thing that could happen as way of a sort of a starting point for all the collaborators. Imagine in a year's time or a year and a half's time, he is the leader of the free world. Because at that point it was ridiculous. It was a joke. It could never happen.
And how did people react when you were saying that?
Well, I mean, when I'd been in America sort of previously to starting the record with Blur. And obviously I'd started to notice the kind of sort of, the amount of press his ridiculous comments were getting, you know. So he was clearly very much, you know, on the map at that point. And I suppose that sort of stuck with me. I think something else though was really important in the sort of genesis of this record, and that was when I was in Sydney when they had their terror attack, you know, and I was in a hotel which was literally 2 blocks down the road from the.
Do you mean in the chocolate shop?
Yeah,
I was there that day. I landed in Sydney that day.
Right.
Yeah.
So well, then you will have witnessed the same kind of sort of acceleration and distortion of kind of events. You know, they closed, the city closed down. Out of one window, I could see helicopters flying over the harbour, and the other was just people, you know, going shopping, literally. And at one point, it was like the country is under siege at this moment in time, you know, and that disturbed me enormously. That amplification of the small event into something which through the frame of however you're following the news. And I mean, the news is guilty of this amplification of things. I just thought, blimey, things are getting really weird, and they continue to get weirder and weirder.
So give me some examples of either lyrics or moments in this record that do you think are a direct response to Trump and things being as crazy as could be?
Well, no, I mean, it's not explicit. I you know, when we're having this discussion, it was imagine how you'd feel if Donald Trump had just won the election and you were out for the night, and you were just, how would you feel? It's quite an abstract kind of sort of question, really. Because I didn't want it to be explicitly about him. I had no interest really in singing about Donald Trump. I just used that as a kind of, you know, as a.
Or what would you do?
As an energy.
Most people would probably have a party, because that's what you do when terrible things happen.
Well, you get drunk, basically.
Very drunk, and then of course there's the hangover the next day, and when you come back into reality and realise what happened. So it's even worse, because there's a hangover as well.
Also, don't underestimate the euphoria people felt as well. You know, for some people that was a very, for a lot of people, that was an incredibly important event. You know, and it's sort of always fascinates me how some people can feel so good about something, and others can just feel so miserable and depressed about the same thing. And you know, it's at points like that you realise that communicating and continuing to communicate and continuing to try and understand each other and not be divisive is the only way forward. And I suppose, you know, in a way, having so many people working together on this record is a response to that fear that I have. And I see it everywhere, and I see it in this country at the moment. And you know, I mean, the mechanics of the EU is not a particularly sexy subject to get so aerated about, but the rise of divisive politics is something to get very active about.
I mean, is that without making this sound really trite? But I mean, is this in a subconscious way partly why you ended up making a record with Noel Gallagher?
Well, I mean that's
Make the record with Noel Gallagher.
Well, you had him on there.
He appears.
He appears.
Well, I didn't have anything else, to be honest with you, on this record, because it was set kind of in an imaginary New York a year later than we were making it. But we did have this tune, and I just thought it would be kind of fun, you know, and a bit silly.
Are you in fact friends?
We are in fact friends. In fact, we're going to be doing that tune on a rival TV channel tonight. Rival. What am I talking
We're not
about?
rivals.
You're not rivals. No.
We're rivals the way you were rivals.
No, you're not allowed. But you're never allowed to talk. You're never allowed to talk about other channels, are you? They never allow you to talk about other channels.
Actually, no, we do. But,
Do you?
Yeah.
All right. We're on Graham Norton this evening.
Right.
Or tomorrow, actually.
Beep.
Yeah, exactly.
That's the bit where the tape glitches.
Listen, the tune appears right at the end of the album. It's not really part of the narrative of that night in New York. It's more
The song that plays in the credits of the
yes,
movie.
it's a song that plays in the credits, and it happens to have two people who have this kind of sort of ridiculous shared history coming together and singing a song with a simple sentiment, but I think it's one that, you know, ultimately applies to us all now.
And is there a song on the album you think that captures best what you were trying to achieve? This feeling.
Well, I mean, there's the most explicit one would be "Hallelujah Money." I mean that you know, the discussion I had with Benjamin was I want a song that could be played at the inauguration of this fantastical sort of person arriving in our life. I mean, I sort of do think sometimes, how would this all be playing out if he hadn't have won?
You'd have a really out of touch record.
I'd have a really out of touch record. Yeah, exactly. We
You
wouldn't be
worked
having
out
this.
fine.
Everyone would be saying, what was that about?
We wouldn't be having this conversation.
Can I ask you a little bit about the process, Jamie? I mean, how, you know, you've got these incredible videos that you're making now, and you're one of the few acts that are still making very expensive videos. How are you doing it? And where's the money coming from?
Making very expensive videos. It makes me feel terrible. Where's the money coming from? Well, we're partnering up with certain people. It doesn't come from record companies anymore. I mean, you know, it would be great if we were the sort of band who could make videos on our iPhones and spend, you know, £300 making a video. But it's an animated band, so we have to. This is the route we have to go. But yeah, we have partners.
How long did the last one take?
The last one took 3 months because it was a 360 VR video, which is something
that's an extraordinary
something I didn't know
endeavour,
anything about when I started.
Yeah, it's like hundreds.
3 months of your
of
life
people
on
as
one
well.
video.
100 people, at least 100 people working on it.
Yeah, we put a few animators in hospital, I think.
I mean, you know,
it was testing.
Gorillaz has always been the art of delegation, to put it mildly.
Yeah, I don't do it by myself.
How have the characters changed? Because they've been around for a long time, even though they don't all appear to have grown up.
I think they've become more believable, more convincing. I think, you know, a lot of the stuff we talked about doing on the first album makes more sense now. I think they have a place in society. I think people believe in them. I mean, you know, they are, you know, most pop stars are cartoon characters anyway. They're not themselves. And you kind of have a cartoon character in the White House at the moment, so it makes complete sense. They have their own Instagram accounts, they have their own Twitter. They've come alive. And they do real-time interviews now, which is something we could never do at the beginning. So
yeah, I mean, it you know, when we first started, it was almost impossible to react to things quickly because of the process of having to hand draw everything. But now you can put a bodysuit on and become a cartoon character within a couple of hours. So you
What
know,
bodysuit? They're real.
They might end that what?
There's no bodysuits, that they're real.
Oh, of course they're real. But
do you think you'll be able to play?
But I think everyone
He can
should
put a bodysuit on.
I think everyone should in television should be slightly nervous about what we've been involved with. Not because of us, but because of the technology that is about to, I mean, it's called Humanz with a Z. I have an ongoing kind of millennial fear of everything in my life being sort of usurped by technology and robots and virtual reality. And ironically, I'm kind of sort of, totally
mildly responsible.
Not responsible, but definitely a participant in my own demise.
I was going to say, if you had a fear of that, it was quite weird of you to begin an animated band, wasn't it? I mean,
well, at the time, I think it's a morbid fascination with the kind of sort of the end of the world, definitely.
Because we made
as we know it,
a mockumentary about 10 years ago, which was really about how you wanted to step away from
longer than 10 years
fronting,
ago.
more longer than 10 years.
Charts of Darkness.
Yeah. Which was really about how you didn't want to front Gorillaz anymore, how you wanted Gorillaz to have a life of its own.
Yeah.
But you still find yourself doing it.
I think these bodysuits could be
Yes,
good
because
though.
the technology has taken this long to catch up with that idea that we had 10 years ago, and now we can do it. Just now we can do it.
Yes,
so the next Gorillaz album is going to be different.
And it's only going to get better and better and better, and then you're going to have people. I'm going to be sitting here, you're going to be sitting here, and no one's going to know that we're not actually sitting there.
We're both sitting at home.
Yeah, exactly.
In our virtual studios.
Exactly. You're going to be presenting the news, but not actually be there.
That's been a fantasy of mine for a
With,
long time.
with an artificial body and hair, you can present the news from your bath, But you'll have this perfect version of you.
And do you have to be engaged with the technology the same way that you have to be engaged with musical technology, or can you just find other people to do all this for you?
Well, as I say, the art of delegation. I mean, I'll be perfectly honest with you. I've got this is my telephone. There's nothing smart about it at all. I struggle with, keeping up to date with stuff like that. But
I think we need to concern ourselves with the ideas more than the technology.
So you say, I'd like to do this, and then somebody works out how to do it.
Well, we're aware of it, but I don't understand exactly how everything works, but we have people who do understand that, and we go with an idea and say, this is what we want to do. How does that work with your technology? And they say, okay, and then we make it work.
And do you think the Gorillaz characters can... I mean, do you think different generations of young people can engage with them?
Yeah, they do.
Because they don't age.
No, they don't. Yeah, exactly.
2D doesn't get older.
Our original fans from the first album are now introducing Gorillaz to their children.
Yeah, and I think in many ways it's much better when people don't kind of listen to all the shit that comes out of our mouths, and they just kind of get into that, because it's so much more abstract and interesting that having the music and then the cartoons and nothing else. I mean, it's live, it's slightly different. I mean, we, when we worked together, we kind of had this idea that we should only play behind a screen, which we did. We did a whole American tour, and it was great. You could turn up on stage and be in your underpants, and no one would know any different. But I have to say, honestly, I found that really difficult towards the end, and I was getting to the point where I wanted to kind of cut myself a little hole in the screen and stick my head out.
It was frustrating for you and for the audience. We put a barrier between you and the audience.
I mean, I like performing. But
so do you think you will be able to perform as 2D before too long?
Next album, yeah.
Yeah.
They're being interviewed now. That's the first step. Next step is they're on stage.
I will get in the suit, and then I shall never get out of the suit ever again. I promise.
But it's skin tight. You can wear it under your real clothes.
Yeah, I probably have to.
And are you very much back together?
And then I'll take it, to the next level, and I'll do everything in my bodysuit.
And never be seen for
No.
real.
It sounds like some horrible scene from a Terry Gilliam movie. Damon in his bodysuit.
It's very Wizard of Oz.
Yeah, it is.
But then again, Gorillaz was always quite Wizard of Oz.
Do you think? But do you plan Gorillaz the same way people think about ordinary bands? I mean, because there was a gap between albums. Is that?
Yeah,
was
there's
that
always
just
a huge
circumstance,
gap.
or-
Well, it's served as well, kind of having these big gaps, because in the interim the technology does kind of move forward, and the whole thing about Gorillaz is that it is that kind of that cutting edge between music and technology. You know, I mean, that's what we've always. That's what's
There has to be a gap.
driven the whole thing and made it different.
There has to be a gap between the albums because they're quite exhausting and they take a lot of work. So you have to have a break. But we're already talking about the next album, so there might not be a gap this time.
I'm in the bodysuit.
It starts with one idea, like there's a conversation one night, you have one idea, a sentence, and that is the basis for a whole album. And then we never talk again until it's finished. And we had that one idea the other night, so we have to get started on the next one. Not today, maybe tomorrow.
Oh,
What was the idea?
Not
Oh,
gonna tell
You're
you.
not going to tell me, okay? You'll tell me in 3 years' time.
It's so ahead of its time. You wouldn't even be able to understand
It's
it.
Britain going back into Europe, isn't it?
Yeah. In bodysuits. In fact, that's what
Tony
that's
Blair
all we all
bodysuit.
need to do. That's all we need to do. We're just 48% of us. We just need to all put on bodysuits and go and live in our own virtual world where we're still part of Europe.
Given where the idea for this album started, how do you think Trump has turned out? How do you feel about how Trump has turned out?
Well, I mean, he's definitely doing things his own way.
Is he as bad as you thought?
It's not that I thought he was bad. I just thought it was just so insane, the thought that someone who with that trajectory could get to that point. You know, I mean, do I like him personally? I've never met him. I think he's probably we'll wait and see. I don't think after 100 days you can really tell, because the world's so volatile at the moment, you know.
But Gorillaz is really big in America, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah.
So, do you think there are many Gorillaz fans who are fans of Trump?
Yeah, I've read some of their comments online. Yeah, there's a lot of them.
Well, there would be.
They just would be.
There just would be. Yeah, I mean, you know, I would hope there are people who were like, who were firmly in us leaving Europe, who were into Europe. I mean, into Gorillaz as well. You know what I mean? It's not. This is the point. It's not them and us. They're trying to sell it to us that it's them and us, but that's not reality. That's an illusion. It's it's something very, very different to that. And what we all need to do is somehow kind of dilute that madness and keep talking to each other. Keep talking to each other. Be sensitive to each other. You know, be open-minded. Don't be nostalgic. Look forwards.
And I'm just ticking off stuff as well. We talked a little bit about process. Can I talk a little bit about the musical process? I mean, there's so many guests on this record. How does that happen? You just ring people up and say, "Do you want to do it?" Or are they all friends? Or
they do invariably become really good friends as a result. But I think, well, I mean, I don't know. I love collaborating. I've been doing it for a long time now. Some of the people I kind of get to know through Africa Express. Others I've never heard of before someone else suggests, I said, why don't you listen to this person's music? And and at that point, it's a learning process always.
but it's such a wide range of people, isn't it?
Yeah, but it's called Humanz. It's meant to have a lot of people. It's meant to be about humans. It's meant to feel like that. It's meant to sort of, belong to a community. It's meant to uplift but also, you know, somehow be of now. It was imagined to be of now. It was imagined that way, and it is now because it's now. We now live now.
But is there something about Gorillaz that enables such an eclectic mix of people to come together into one place and go, yeah, we can all do that?
Yes, because that interface, you know, between the cartoon reality and the physical reality is so fluid with Gorillaz. I think you can just essentially do anything you like, you know, and there isn't a plan at the beginning. There was that idea, imagine, and I wanted to make a record that you could put on a party and dance to, because I felt I hadn't made a record like that before, and that was something I wanted, you know, test myself with. But apart from that, it was a very open book.